Welcome to the Early Wedge presented by BetMGM. I am your host, Eric Cohen. If you won money from this podcast last week, or you plan on winning money this week, make sure to like this video because we absolutely crushed it on this show last week. It was absolutely unbelievable. I hit Davis Thompson, but I had him, behind in the without market. One Sia Nejad had him on top. So great pick there. Patrick McDonald was all over it too. I mean, there's no way that you could have watched this show last week and not won money. All right, let's bring in the stars of the show to talk more about it. We have the host of the Early Edge every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, Sia Nejad, and the best golf writer on the planet, in my opinion, who puts out viral posts on social media left and right. It is Patrick McDonald. Boy, I'm having a problem talking today. This is going to be a fun show. See, I'll start with you. Davis Thompson, how's it feel? You hit that big one and, feels pretty good to get on the board again, huh?
Yeah, first of all, you hit it as well. I mean, you had the same number I did. In fact, you hit it in a better way, in my opinion, because you were able to find the same number I got with a without market. So, I mean, that was kind of cool. Good find by you. I can't remember exactly where you found that, but we both hit 22-1. What was really cool is with about 10 holes left, our recap screen, we put it out on Twitter. Other than a couple of long shots that we had, like in the 100-1, 150-1 range sprinkle plays, we had 6 players collectively because we had a lot of overlap in our outright card. And I believe 5 of those 6 with about 9 holes remaining were inside the top 15. And we ended up with Denny making a charge, who of course was Patrick's lone play, which is pretty amazing in and of itself. But then we had 2 of my 3 were Luke Clanton and Davis Thompson, who finished 1-2. So it was definitely a great week, and I'm very interested to see what happens this week. I think a lot of the characters from last week that flew over could do pretty well this week too.
So, Patrick, I took a kind of a philosophy of, Sia's top pick of Davis Thompson and your top pick of Denny McCarthy, who I also liked and I gave out last week, and I put them in a combined top 10 parlay. Felt pretty good about that one at the end of the day. So I'm going to give out my special top 10 parlay later in the show. But your thoughts on what we saw over there in that last event in the Quad Cities? I mean, should we take away that Davis Thompson is the new superstar? Everything that you promised Grayson Sigg to be, now Davis Thompson is?
Well, Sigg's got a few more years on Thompson. But, I mean, Thompson's always been this guy. I don't think it's too surprising that he's a winner on the PGA Tour. I'm sure he'll become a multiple-time winner on the PGA Tour and contend major championships, to tell you the truth. So I'm not too surprised about it. Congratulations to you guys again. I appreciate the hat tip on the tweets. I'm not hitting outright, so I got to make money some other way. And it looks like for me, it's just going viral a couple times per day.
Well, you're getting your money from X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. But I also have a potential showdown later in the program. That's another way for you to make money. See, I want to ask you before we get into storylines this week. Current form was huge for Davis Thompson. He had a great U.S. Open, was really good in Detroit, and then obviously carried that form. Now, we see kind of the same thing with Aaron Rai this week. Do you buy into current form when making your plays, or do you kind of look at course history? What's your mix, so to speak?
To be honest with you, it varies week to week. I think current form, recent form is really, really big for me. Course history can be really big for me on certain courses. Certainly when you're coming to a link style course, I do think that factors in. There's also a lot of unknowns with when you talk about recent form, with how some of these guys have played on the DP World Tour and how that translates in an event that has PGA Tour players in it. So there's a lot going on with this particular tournament that I think may have me light in some places and maybe stronger in other places in terms of like how I'm spreading out my money. But yeah, recent form is really, really big for me. I'll say this, especially in like the lower tiered events where the talent field is watered down a little bit. I'm usually reducing what I don't model in the typical way, but when I'm looking at metrics, I'm usually reducing it to like sometimes 16, 24, 20 rounds because I want to see which of those quote lesser players are really hot, really in good form. That's part of what led me to Davis Thompson and Luke Clanton, frankly.
Fair enough. All right. Well, now it is time to get into, we're going overseas. We got the Genesis Scottish Open. Now we're also going to give out picks for the ISCO and LIV as well. Isn't that what they call it? The ISCO, Patrick? Is that right? Or is there something
I believe it's the ISCO.
ISCO.
Okay. Next week, I guess you could say we'll call it the WASCO. Am I right?
this guy's on fire. Like, I don't even, there's no off switch on this thing.
5 minutes into the show, and he's not even singing yet. All right, Patrick, you say this is the best 2 weeks in golf. Why?
Oh, by far the best 2 weeks to be a golf fan, in my opinion. I mean, look at the options we have from a betting perspective just this week. Every tour has a tournament. The PGA Tour has 2 tournaments, so there's plenty to get your fix on. And you add in the aspect of waking up early, watching a little coffee golf, getting your fix that way. Guess what? You still have your afternoon all to yourself. You can help around the house. You can help your wife, do whatever you need to do, because guess what? The next morning, your butt is going to be on the couch watching golf again. And then it leads into the final major championship of the season, the Open, which personally, viewing wise, is my favorite to watch as well. So links golf is always fun. There's a little nuance to it. It seems like it takes some time to learn, and guys have figured it out. Some surprising figures have figured it out. So you got to factor that in as well.
All right, but Patrick, for those of us who live on the West Coast, and I know you're going to give me this East Coast best what I mean, it's a disaster because it starts before you go to bed, and then you either miss the players that have played overnight, or you wake up and it's over. Like, you don't even get a chance to watch. So this is why for East Coasters, I see what you're talking about. For me on the West Coast, can you understand where I'm coming from here?
I will say the East Coast is the worst, time zone to watch sports in general. So just let us have this one or these 2.
I will give you that. Sia, I know you're the one person who will be pulling an all-nighter this week to watch, and probably next week as well. I hope you're going to still be fresh for 10 a.m. Eastern hosting those early edge shows.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, we have another network show at 2:00 where we'll probably be dishing out some live plays because, of course, the Scottish Open will have concluded round 2, or I should say round 1 on Thursday. So something to keep in mind on CBS Sports Network at 2:00. It's going to be a really good time for the round to be closing and for us to give out a live outright or some matchups, things of that nature. Real quick, I got to give a shout out. Speaking of golf, and maybe Mike McClure joins us on Thursday on the network show. Robert Stitt says, thanks Early Wedge crew plus McClure. Got 5th last weekend in the FanDuel main event. That's a lot of money from, I do most of my stuff on DraftKings, but I'm pretty sure that's a lot of money. So congratulations to you. Okay. Am I pulling an all-nighter? Was that the question? First of all, okay, real quick.
That is, yes. Yeah.
I'm probably not pulling an all-nighter because of my responsibilities at, 10 in the morning, 2:00, and the rest of the day. With that said, Patrick misspoke here. He said, hey, you got the overnight golf. It gives you a chance to kind of like maybe help out with the chores or, spend some time here and there. That is not the way you play it. Let me just tell you, you guys and girls have built-in excuses throughout the entire day because you got the Open Championship, you got the Scottish Open, and they got the Open Championship next week. That'll take you to basically the early afternoon. But good news, the ISCO is an alternate event, which has some big name players. So you have an excuse to go basically to 6, 7 o'clock without having any responsibility whatsoever. And in these 2 weeks, if you don't use that excuse, you're a lesser man than me because you got to use it. You absolutely have to use it. These are 2 great tournaments, 2 great betting opportunities, and superstars in both. I'm looking just as much forward to the ISCO as I am the Scottish Open because it's the same betting opportunity. It's the same DFS opportunity. It's the same outright opportunity. Watch both and put everything else to the side.
Boy, I'll tell you, see, you just promoted golf. I mean, you should be hired by the PGA Tour after what you just said there. I don't know about the ISCO. Like, I try to stay away in our text thread. I told you, I was like, I just don't want to get involved in the ISCO. I've got my bets for the Scottish and the LIV event. Like, I don't think I can handle this golf overload. But one thing I can handle this week is watching Rory Well, maybe I can't. Watching Rory McIlroy. Which Rory will we see this week? The demoralized U.S. Open version or a man on a mission for redemption? Well, it's a good question. I think, now I know some of you may disagree, and we'll get to that later in the show. I think he is going to be a man on a mission, had been playing excellent golf, minus missing a couple of 3-footers at Pinehurst. And I'm glad that he did because we were profitable, several of us, with Bryson DeChambeau. So that was great. I think Rory makes it back for us and more this week, but we'll find out what everybody else thinks later in the show. All right, let us get on to DFS picks. And Patrick, you're going, Grayson Sigg isn't in this event. So you're fading a popular name here at a pretty good price in Tom Kim. And I'm not sure why, but you're going to explain. 9,500, a good price here. Tom Kim, really good course history.
Yeah, great course history, couple top 6 finishes, bit of a sneaky good links golf player in general, right? He finished, I believe, runner up at the Open last year as well. So coming off the runner up finish, the playoff loss to Scotty Scheffler at the Travelers, I just think the run has kind of, I'm not going to say it's run its course, but I just like some of those other names. I think I'd rather play a Hovland at a lower ownership. I think Hideki's going underappreciated in general, like he normally does. Fleetwood will be popular, which we'll talk about that later. But I think Tom Kim's just going to drive up a lot of interest at 9,500, and I'm not sure that he can, if he can win this event, to tell you the truth. I'm not sure if it's going to be a shootout. You look at where he's won his 3, it's been all past, 21, 22 under. And so I'm not too sure if he has that winning upside that I want out of someone in this 9-ish K. So I'm going to pass on him, which means he's probably going to win. And instead, we are going to the bargain bin, baby, 5,900. Matthew Jordan. The real golf fans will remember him from last year's Open, top 10 finisher. A native from Royal Liverpool, was one of the great stories that week. He's playing great. I mean, his starts haven't been great. He has a couple top 5 finishes on the DP World Tour, but he's top 40 in this field in terms of strokes gained tee to green, top 10 off the tee as well. Has a top 20 finish when it was just a European Tour event on this golf course. So good enough for me. Ryo Hisasune, I think I absolutely nailed that. 6,300. We're going back to the well with him. Ball striking tee to green was great. Just didn't make enough putts last week. He's an old DP World Tour guy. So he should be comfortable on this golf course as well. So I'm going back to him. And then Kevin, you top 20 last week, 14th off the tee, 15th in terms of approach in this field, one of the best fields of the year. He is top 15 in both ball striking categories. Short game leaves a little bit to be desired, but I'm hoping the links golf layout can kind of ease some of that. So I'm going to take a chance on you.
I think your picks are, that is a great pick by you. I love how you have all these bargain basement picks. Sia's got some higher profile guys on his list, but here's the one thing that sticks out. And I really like Min Woo Lee this week. We'll talk about him later on. But Sia, I also really like Tommy Fleetwood, and you're fading him at 9,900. Why?
Well, let's see what happens with his ownership, because that's the main reason I'm fading him. First of all, I don't think he has a ton of win equity. I just don't. And I think history kind of tells me that I'm right. I could be wrong this week. We'll see. But the point is, he's 9,900, which puts him in the top 5 from a pricing standpoint. But let's go down to like the top 6, or maybe the top 8, 9, and 10, which includes Hideki Matsuyama, Min Woo Lee. What is their win equity versus Tommy Fleetwood? I know we can look at the last 2 years and be like, Tommy Fleetwood, Tom Kim, they finished really great the last 2 years. Well, it's a 2-year sample size. Let's see what happens in year 3. But if those are going to be the comfortable plays for people, and right now they're not generating a ton of ownership relative to the 4 guys at the top, for example, but if they're going to get ownership that is a little bit off, I'm very, very happy to fade them, because on Sunday, even if they're in the conversation, I think they fade away. And believe it or not, I think guys like Davis Thompson, which we saw last week, and Min Woo Lee, I think they enter the conversation on Sundays, whereas Tommy Fleetwood fleets away from the conversation, if you will. So I'm just not interested in taking a guy that everybody wants to take. Now, if his number ends up being low, then, maybe I'll reconsider. But right now it's trending somewhat upward. I like Min Woo Lee. Like I'm playing DFS and the betting market a little differently this week. Normally there's a lot of overlap. Like I'm not betting Min Woo Lee in the outright market, but at 9,200 in DFS, or I'm not even betting him in matchups, to be honest with you. At 9,200 in DFS, I really like the value because of his upside, because of his history here. And I'll say the same about Davis Thompson. Obviously, his recent form is amazing. Let's see how he does. And of course, he's never played before, or at least not professionally. And, a link style, let's see how he does. But at 7,900, I'm willing to find out. Same with Bobby McIntyre. Bobby Mack is your quintessential DFS player, because he's either going to sink you on day one, or he's going to be there on Sunday afternoon. It's one of the two, including on this course. So this is how I'm playing DFS. Not necessarily guys I would lean on in a head-to-head matchup or in an outright, but guys I think can spike. There are guys you'll see with my outright card. I have a very small outright card. There are guys that I'm betting there that I'm not playing in DFS. I'm very, very likely fading in DFS. That's how I'm playing. I will say this from a DFS standpoint, because the top 4 guys are very popular. I don't hate the idea of having a balanced lineup and taking guys that are uncomfortable to you in the 9K range. For example, starting your lineup with Viktor Hovland, Min-Woo Lee, starting your lineup with Viktor Hovland and Hideki Matsuyama or something like that, and really having a balanced lineup. I think that's going to be different because of everybody's tendency to grab at least one guy at the top. Just something to consider. Oh, I'm sorry, but you're on mute. So this must be sage advice. It's just that we can't hear it.
Wow.
The chat's on fire. I'm enjoying listening to you, Sia and Patrick, and then reading the chat, which is absolutely on fire. I just, I put myself on mute and embarrassed myself. Patrick, what's the deal? Why is everybody on Viktor Hovland this week? I'm going to fade him a little bit later in the show, but what are your thoughts on Hovland? Are you in or are you out?
Oh, I'm big time in on Viktor Hovland this week. Okay. Yeah, I am.
That wasn't even the showdown that I was going to go for you. I'm just pointing that out.
Well, I think I'm on both sides of that matchup. So, no, I just think you think Links Golf, and he has a great pedigree in Links Golf. He has 3 top 15 finishes to start his Open career, and I think the thought is he could just putt from everywhere. The short game isn't going to be tested as much as it is here in the United States. So I think that's the general thought. But I just like him on Links Golf and the way he's hitting the golf ball currently. So I'm going to eat the very bad short game.
Okay, well, I think that's fair. And then when we look at FRLs with Sia's awesome list here, who's number 1 on that list? 1, Viktor Hovland. All right, Sia, based on what Patrick just said, why are you buying in on Hovland early, and are you buying on him late?
I mean, can we just recognize that just the professionalism of EC? He goes from being on mute, like Disasterville. It took you till July to actually, it took you to July to actually mess that up. So props to you in some regard. But then you ask Patrick about Viktor, and it transitions perfectly to the first round leader mark, which of course was by design. I'm not saying that facetiously. I know you did it that way. So again, you always take credit away from yourself. It's kind of your shtick with the Davis Thompson thing and the mute button. But you're a pro, my friend. Viktor Hovland, also a pro, plus 3,500 morning tee time. If you look at how he's done over the last 2 years here, and again, I'm saying the last 2 years, even though it goes back further at the Renaissance Club, that's how I'm going to say it, Patrick. I'm sorry. You can correct me later.
Yeah.
Is it Renaissance Club? I also desperately want to call it British Open next week as opposed to the Open Championship. We'll see where I fall there. But the thing about Hovland over the last 2 years, and I don't know if I finished my sentence, it's when this became a co-sanctioned event, that was 2 years ago. And that's why a lot of people are just using the last 2 years. But feel free to go back last 5 or 6 years on this one. Hovland's short game was actually pretty good. When he missed the cut and he finished 25th, but his around the green play was pretty good. And I think in one of those two. And I think that's reminiscent of what Patrick is saying, is that link style golf is for Viktor. I don't know that I like him to win it, although I don't hate that play. First round leader, though, I think the conditions are going to be really good on Thursday. I think we're going to see soft conditions. We're going to need a guy that gets it out there, that can be dialed in with the ball striking and potentially with the putter. Hovland can do all those things. So I'll take 35-1. Min-Woo Lee, same thing. Well, not really the same thing because the ball striking isn't quite there because of the approach play, but he has been okay on approach. If you look at like 2 of his last 3 tournaments, he's starting to trend at least decently with an approach play, but I'm looking for off the tee game. I'm looking for hot putter, which actually transitions nicely into Robert McIntyre. And then finally, Matthew Pavone, 75-1. I'm really starting to see his game trend too. He went through a stretch early in the year where he was awesome. Then he wasn't awesome. And now the last 2 tournaments, he's really started to pick it up again. I don't think he can win this tournament personally. I think he's a really good DFS play. In fact, I think all of these guys are really good DFS plays, but I really think Pavone is sneaky in the first round leader market. 75-1. I'll take that every time. By the way, these are all DraftKings numbers. Just so happens they had slightly better numbers than some of the others with these first round leaders.
Coming up next, the Matthew Pavone love keeps growing, and Patrick's going to lose $100 to me after we hear from one of our sponsors.
Football action continues. Are you ready for this? Ready to take chances? As the gridiron is taken over by the Great White North. It's time to storm the fortress. It's time to fight on the battlefield. Catch the Canadian Football League on CBS Sports Network.
One thing about that's awesome about hosting the show is I get to kind of see what you guys are thinking before we go in and look at this cheat sheet. And then I get to, if you post your picks early enough, I get to go make some bets before we do the show and try to get the best numbers possible. And it feels good when I write the Monday column, you guys write your columns, and we all kind of have some synergy. And one player that we have some synergy on is Matthew Pavon. And Patrick, you are picking him as the top Frenchman. Now, I don't know, is Jean Van de Velde in this one? Is Victor Dubuisson in this one? Because I don't know many other French golfers that might be playing this week. Can you educate us?
So bear with me with some of these pronunciations. Victor Perez, I can do that one. Julien Guerrier, I'd give that a B. Romain Lettuce, Antoine Walker, no, Rosner, and Hugo Coussard. I'm going to call him the Croissant. So it's Matthew Pavon over those 5 golfers, like Sia said. Pavon, final group, final round in the U.S. Open. Nice little comeback there at the Travelers Championship as well. T16, I want to say. And so I'm going to ride with Pavon, who has played here pretty much every year, I believe, between the DP World Tour and the PGA Tour. Well, it's his first year on the PGA Tour. Top 12 finish here, one of those. And so I'm going to ride the hot hand on Pavon over Perez, Gruyere cheese, romaine lettuce, Antoine, don't call me Walker, Rosner, and Hugo Croissant. And then I'm taking Xander Schauffele even money over Rory McIlroy because I think honestly right now Xander's the better player, like slightly, not by much, but at even money I'll take it.
You want some of that action, Patrick? You in or are you out? I love me some Rory McIlroy. Bounce back this week was my storyline. Will be an outright. I'll play the low number. I don't care. Rory's going back to back in this event. So are you in or are you out?
I know what you're doing, Eric. I know you're puffing out your chest. You just want an outright on Davis Riley. Here you are taking a -120 favorite, acting like you're doing the crazy thing against me. But I see right through you. And I am in, baby. Snake, hit that music. It's gonna be a showdown.
Hey, I'll give you the juice if you want it. Do you want the 120? Or are you giving me even money? Okay, yeah, even money? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, that's good. I feel really good about Rory this week. My record against Sia, not so good. Patrick, I'm only a couple under 500, I think. So, I got to try to earn it back here. Sia, I mean, I'm tempted to go and challenge you with Fitzpatrick over Matsuyama. Why do you like the other way?
Because I hate Fitzpatrick. I just think his form has been off. I think if the conditions were a little different, sorry, I guess that was kind of blunt. I don't hate him as a person. I bet you he's probably a little like boring to hang out with. He seems a little kind of, I don't know, like note takey. Like I'm not sure like he'd be much of a conversationalist. But either way, his play's been bad. And if this course was a little bit more like we know with Fitzpatrick, we always talk about him, or a lot of people talk about him in the context of tougher courses, that's where he shows up. It's not like this is a birdie fest or it's a super easy course, but I also think because of the conditions and the potential lack of wind, which is what it's tracking for relative to other Scottish Opens, I just don't think this is really going to be the course for him. Neither of their histories are very impressive, but when we talk about recent form, Hideki Matsuyama's is much better. So -110 over Fitzpatrick, who again, I don't think has played very well at all. I'll just take that every time. I think this should be like -130 or so. For the record, I almost took a play on, I believe it was Rory over Colin Morikawa. And so that's Patrick's matchup in your showdown reminded me of that. I think it was Rory -130, maybe over at BetMGM. That was certainly a lean for me. I just kind of wanted to point it out. My other play is ISCO. There's a lot of matchups I liked on ISCO, but I didn't. By the way, this used to be the Barbasol. For those of you that are like wondering where this name come from, this is a different sponsor. Barbasol Championship, same alt event. I like Carson Young a lot. We're going to get to my ISCO outrights later in the show. Maybe some live outrights from you guys, maybe one from me. Spoiler alert, Carson Young is one. If you follow me on Twitter, you'd already know that because I kind of tweeted it out yesterday afternoon. JJ Spahn's in really good form too. Don't get me wrong, but I think Carson Young is chasing something here. We saw evidence of that last week. I think he's in really good form. I like how he matches up against JJ Spawn. They match up kind of, they're not that different here. So it's not that I think Carson Young is a much better option than JJ Spawn, but I think his form is really trending in a really good direction. So I'm taking him -120 in a tournament matchup over JJ Spawn.
Well, I mean, I'm going to trust you on the ISCO, and I'm going to try myself not to bet it. Don't tempt me, please. But that makes a lot of sense. I did get JJ Spawn the other week. I think I credit myself for bringing him back to life after missing 10 of his most recent 15 cuts. Back-to-back, top 10s or pretty close to that. So, JJ, you can credit me for that, for picking you the other week in my long shot column on the SportsLine, in the SportsLine article. All right, my head-to-heads, Matthew Pavon over Patrick's boy Adam Scott at -115 on DraftKings. Pavon T12 here in 2021, as we talked about. But that Lynx prowess of late, pretty darn good. High finishes at the Alfred Dunhill Championship last fall, and then, of course, Pebble Beach. Both, though, were 54-hole events after rain washed out the final round. Adam Scott only won top 25 in his last 7. That's why Patrick isn't picking him in anything recently, and he missed cut in his only appearance here last year. And I'm going Tommy Fleetwood. Now, listen, I mean, this is the last time I checked. This event is in the United Kingdom, and it's not in America. And we know the rules about betting Tommy in America. I've said it a million times on this show this year. We don't bet Tommy that often, ever on top in America. But hey, when we're overseas, why not? And Vic is not playing well, so at -125 also on DraftKings, I'm doing it. Tommy, top 6 here the last 2 years, and he lost in the playoff to Aaron Rye in 2020. And I'm taking a wait-and-see approach on Vic. His around-the-green game is so bad, but the putting does nullify that some here. Just have to see more before I buy in fully before next week's show. And if I pick Vic to win next week, you can call me a hypocrite, so I'm okay with that. All right, Patrick, before we go on, I want to talk about our finishing positions. I know you don't have anything here. What do you know about the Scandinavian mixed tournament from last month? It's a very interesting event, and what can you tell us about that before we go into this?
It was one of the all-time worst collapses in professional golf by Sebastian Soderberg.
Oh, right.
But who did he lose to?
Tour. Oh, gosh, that's a great question.
He lost to Lynn Grant, who is a ladies player, because it's a mixed event. So it's the one. That's right. But it's a mixed event, which I didn't even know existed until I was doing some research for this segment. But you say, where would you put this Soderberg collapse among recent meltdowns? Because this has to be up there, right?
Oh, if you bet him that week, I am still praying for you.
I'd quit. Yeah, I'd quit.
It is that bad.
Yeah.
And he has been a guy to do that. I bet him at the Volvo China that got cut to 54 holes. I was like, this is sweet. He has a 3-stroke lead. We're finally going to cash a ticket in Europe. Nope. Snap hook off the 18th hole, double bogey, loses that tournament. And then a couple weeks later, he does this. You had the DP World Tour social accounts tweeting out, is he going to break the all-time scoring record? Is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? And then he doesn't even win the golf tournament. It was that bad. He missed like a 2-footer on the last hole.
Well, it's a double bogey. So that's a good question by Sime in the chat. Is it worse than the Jean Van de Velde 99 Open Championship collapse, which is an all-timer?
You can't compare a major championship to the Scandinavian mix. You can't compare the two.
Okay. I just wanted some context before we got into picks here. All right, Sia, you're going with an awesome pick here. A+++. I mean, this is just giving away, in my opinion. This is the sports books being generous. Minwoo Lee, top 20 at +130.
Yeah, Minwoo Lee has been, he hasn't been good enough to win tournaments over the last, 3-4 months, but he's been good enough to basically top 25 a majority of them. And you take that and you take the good, and for the record, I wanted to do T30, but it was like -140. I figured I'd go T20 here at a nice plus number. But you look at his history here and you look at what he's been doing and his course fit. And when I say what he's been doing, I'm talking about his recent form. It's good enough for me to be in that top 20 market. Part of the reason I don't have a lot of finishing positions, because normally I have like 3 or 4, is because I do think there's a little bit of unpredictability with the link style course or like the pseudo link style course, but also all of these DP World Tour players that we think we know something about. Like I think C-May, speaking of the chat, was talking about Tom McKibben, how he's getting a lot of love, and he is getting a lot of love. I don't think he's going to be like super popular in DFS, but a lot of people are talking about him. I'm pretty sure, like in terms of his profile, I think he's pretty accurate off the tee as opposed to long, but I'll have to double check that. Accuracy not going to be super important for me here, but he's been playing well, and I think he played well here last year. But the long and short of it is, I don't want to like dabble in the finishing position market too much, because I think some of these guys that I'm not fully aware of on a week-to-week basis on the DP World Tour can sneak inside the top 20 or sneak inside the top 15, top 30, and push some of these guys, these American players, or these PGA Tour players, I should say, like right outside the top 20, top 30. And so that's why I just kind of went with one here. Minwoo Lee, T20 plus 130. Speaking of Sia, he got bit by a shark. He said that earlier in the chat. I'm pretty sure he said like 87 stitches or 187, something crazy. That is unbelievable. I don't think it was recent, but he mentioned it nonetheless. Man, hope you're doing okay. That's a crazy one.
I definitely missed that one. Wow, a bull shark, 187 stitch. Wow,
unbelievable.
I don't even know
what.
That's talk about throwing us off course. That does it.
What body
Patrick,
of water?
I
need all the detail. Not all the details, but
tell us where not to go. Patrick, do you know anything what Mark Green said about Martin Keimer losing a 9-shot lead once in Dubai? Is there anything that you remember about that?
I'd like to think my knowledge is extensive, but that one is escaping me.
Yeah, I figured if you don't know about it, we need some more context, Mark. All right, my finishing positions, Aaron Rai. We're going to play him top 10, top 20. Playing great right now. You just can't bet him to win. It just, after we learned that in Detroit, I hope you didn't make that mistake last week, because he's not winning anytime soon. But his top 10 in his last 2, top 20 in his last 4 events. And his putting has been elite. Gained nearly 9 strokes last week. And he won here on this course in 2020 against a much weaker field. Did beat Tommy Fleetwood. I missed the cut in his last 2, but I'm taking the form over the history at this event, the recent history at this event. Get that top 10 at plus 330 with ties, and top 20 plus 150 with ties. So take a look at that. I am going to take Tom McKibben. Don't know a lot about him, but when you look at the numbers here, 4 top 10s and 5 top 30s in his last 5 DP World Tour events. And he was T41 at Pinehurst, and I very well could have walked right by him and had no idea who he was, and that I would be picking him 3 weeks later on Early Wedge. Just the way it happens sometimes. But good for Tom. He was T35 here last year. I think he jumps up into the top 30 at plus 160. And then, well, we teased it earlier. Listen, so this Soderberg guy, Sebastian Soderberg, top 30 plus 160. So he's second in the race to Dubai standings behind Rory McIlroy. Now, way back, Rory's like Scotty in these rankings, and then Soderberg is just way back. But can he get over this Van de Velde-esque collapse, which is what I had in my notes here, even before we talked about it, at the Scandinavian Mixed? He did withdraw from his next tournament in the middle of it. That's not a good sign. But at plus 160, listen, since the end of January, he has 6 top 10s and 7 top 30s in 10 events, including that withdrawal. I'm going to take my chances here on this guy. I mean, a top 30, Patrick, like there's some, I'm not expecting them to contend, but this is a fairly safe bet, no?
I like the pick. You look since the end of March, it's been T2, second, T3, T68. That was the PGA Championship, and T2. The guy he always contends on the European Tour.
So just for those who are listening and aren't reading the chat, C-May said this was away from in Barbados, 5 foot in 5 foot water.
5 foot
those
water.
people, yeah, we're not going anywhere near Barbados anytime soon. And if so, I'm staying at the all-inclusive where there's not water nearby. I'll go in the pool. My mind is blown. But first, if you want to make a bet on Soderberg or any of these other guys, I think a good place to do it is BetMGM. BetMGM has you covered when betting the Scottish Open and ISCO Championship this week. BetMGM customers can receive a 25% profit boost token on any straight play this week on the PGA Tour. Log on to the BetMGM app for more offer details. Coming up next, some outrights and, of course, my auto fade list after we hear from one of our sponsors. All right, now it is time for the part where we have been crushing it the last few weeks. If you're watching this show, and you're playing our outrights in some capacity, you have made some serious money over the last 2 weeks, last 3 weeks, because we had Bryce, or last 4 weeks with Bryce in there. Okay. All right. We're going to start with you, Patrick. Wait a second. You're picking Tommy Fleetwood, who, wait, let's start with my auto fade list. Haven't we learned that Tommy Fleetwood generally, I mean, I know it's not in the US, but still, Tommy to win, I'm seeing that. Nobody else here we have to worry about this week. Scotty's not playing. Xander, I mean, we've already talked about that. Rory's going to beat him. JT, fine. Anybody Sia I should be worried about on this list, first of all, outside of Xander, maybe? Tommy?
No. I mean, Xander's already crossed off, but yeah, no.
If Tommy wins, okay, it's fine because he's not in the U.S. I think Jake should add a non-U.S. part. Like that should be exempt. I know he won't, though. We know how that goes. All right, Patrick, tell us, Tommy, why are you betting him on top to win?
Yeah, he is the guy I chose at 20-1. Just the links golf experience is really hard to look past. A couple top 6 finishes here recently, like you said, the runner-up or the playoff loss. I believe that tournament was in October during the COVID year to Aaron Rye. And he's playing a lot of really good golf, not like great yet, but good. And I think the iron play took a big step there at the Travelers Championship. So I'm going to go with the Englishman. It would be vintage Tommy Fleetwood fashion to get his first PGA Tour win in like a co-sanctioned DP World Tour event that's not in the U.S., like you said. So I just think everything lines up for him this week. And then Victor Hovland at 22. The ball striking, especially with the driver. I mean, he drove the absolute cover off the golf ball there at the Travelers Championship. That should set him up for success. The iron play has been generally good, and he's an above average putter. Obviously, the short game is quite poor, but I'm going to look past it. I'm going to take his upside. I think he's closer than it looks. I understand potentially being late on him. I'm going to try to be early on him. I think these next 2 weeks are his weeks, and the FedEx Cup playoffs. I think he's in for a big end to his summer, honestly. But I'm buying in early at 22.
So I'm playing the without market, and it is including Rory McIlroy, who I'll talk about. But then it also includes Xander and Ludwig, who you like this week. Why are you on both these players?
This is very unusual for me because I'm usually trying to maybe find one guy that's shorter than 20-1 or maybe shorter than 16-1. And then I move on to some, 20 to 30-1 range. And then I move on to the 40, 50 to 1 range. And that's what I did this week. I mean, that's how I sort of start. Like, who do I like in the back of the pack? You'll see a long shot in a second when we get to that part. But when I looked at the 20-1 range, the 30-1 range, and so on and so forth, there just wasn't anybody I was in love with. So almost by process of elimination, I got to Xander Schauffele at plus 850. Everything is clicking for him. I mean, he just does everything well. And I especially like him this week without Scotty Scheffler, without all the live intimidation from guys like Bryson DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka, guys like that. Tyrrell Hatton, who I think could be really good next week and who might be good on live this week as well. So I like Xander Schauffele plus 850. It's not like I'm paying plus 600 here or plus 550 or even plus 700. I think plus 850 is a really fair number on Xander. And the way he's hitting it and the way he's putting, it's just too good to pass up. The other one, Ludwig, plus 1,800 is where I got him when I published my SportsLine article. I think it's plus 1,600 pretty much everywhere. I still like that number. I think he can pop. He missed the cut last year. I'm not super concerned about that. I am concerned about part of the reason he missed the cut last year is because his around the green play was quite bad. But again, I think there's variance when it comes to around the green play. And I think the good conditions here and the fact that he's seen the course once will lend itself to him being better in that department. He can get hot with the putter. We know the ball striking is great. Driving distance is going to be a key for me this week. He checks that box as well. So these are my two main outrights. I'm keeping it pretty short. And I'm moving on real quick. I wanted to answer a question from Jay Parr. Corey Connors, he says, he's been in good form. No love for him. I personally don't have love for him only because from a DFS standpoint in particular, because he's priced kind of high. And normally that's okay because that means his ownership's low. But for me right now, it's looking like he's getting some ownership. Putter's coming around for him. If you want to take him as maybe not an outright, but a top 20 or top 30 play, I don't hate it, but it's not for me.
All right, I got two winners on the board this week among my three picks because Rory McIlroy is going to win this event by at least 3 strokes. And I am not concerned about it. Just save the tape. Mark the tape right now. 39 whatever in the Jake, mark it down. When Rory wins this tournament going away, you'll remember where you heard it first. And then Tommy Fleetwood or Min Woo Lee is going to finish second, and we're going to cash both of these tickets. We've talked about all three of these players. I just think Rory, it's redemption time. I know he won here last year and was making birdies in wind gusts that, I mean, I would have made quadruple, quintuple bogeys, and Rory's making birdies at the end of this event last year. That's all I needed to see. He's bouncing back this week, and I think he is my first click for next week at the Open Championship. Now, before we go into long shots, Sia is going to give out a few not so long shots, but it's the ISCO. You can't help yourself. You're going to play these three players, and you're going to start with a player who you mentioned the other week has a great last name. So 16-1. Let's hear why Michael Thorbjornsson.
Yeah, you remember 2 weeks ago, I didn't have the best DFS week because two of my plays were Thorbjorn Olesen and Michael Thorbjornsson. I think neither of which made the cut. It wasn't great. But last week we saw what Thorb is capable of, and he's got some decent competition at the ISCO. Obviously, Luke Clanton is some serious competition, but he's like plus 1,000, plus 1,100. And between those two, I don't think there's a huge difference. I think both of them are great. I was obviously on Luke Clanton last week, but if I'm getting Thorbjornsson at plus 1,600 versus Clanton at plus 1,000, that's a big enough difference for me to just defer to Thorb here. The next two, Mac Meisner, Carson Young. One thing I looked at here was off the tee play, scoring metrics, things of that nature. These aren't just random picks. Like, I ran the normal numbers I would run for any tournament. And I wish I had spent enough time on this to like really diagnose matchups and things of that nature too. Other than the one I gave out, I really didn't, and including finishing positions. But I do like all three of these guys. These numbers crashed. Like Carson Young and Mac Meisner yesterday afternoon around 2:30 were both 40-1. And they went immediately down to 30-1. In some places, Meisner is down to 28-1, Carson Young down to 30-1. So they're definitely receiving some attention, something to keep in mind. If you're looking for super long shots in this tournament, I think Harry Hall in that 50, 55-1 range is a decent look as well. But I like these three quite a bit.
All right. There we have it. Michael Thorbjornsson's due to win right now against this field. Not many excuses. I mean, his talent has shown the last couple of weeks. All right. Mm-hmm. Speaking of talent, where you have the number 5 player in the world, Wyndham Clark, who I know likes his food gluten-free and, is on the Olympic team, which has angered some people and also made Patrick McDonald's tweet go viral, part of it. But so Patrick is rewarding him with a plus 5,700 long shot pick. Why?
So he has a couple top 25 finishes here and a couple starts. Both of those tournaments, he finished inside. I believe he ranked 4th in both of them in terms of strokes gained ball striking. So when you're thinking long shot, you're thinking someone who's going to be all or nothing boomer bust type option. That has been Wyndham Clark's 2024 2AT. He has contended some weeks, and he has been a complete afterthought other weeks. And I think he found something with the iron play there at the Travelers Championship, his best approach performance since TPC Sawgrass. And so I'm going to dive back in, Windy C, Wyndham Clark at 57-1 to win the Scottish Open.
Hey, real quick, EC, real quick.
Yeah.
Because I mentioned at the beginning of the show, like balanced lineups are a way to just automatically be different because people are just going to grab guys in the top row, the top 4, if you will. I'm not saying that's a bad move, but I think a balanced lineup will be different. And that balanced lineup that might start with a Hovland or, something in that range might include Min Woo Lee. Wyndham Clark's only 8,100. I think that's a really good look to include on your team. Again, we're looking for upside here. We're not looking for balance necessarily. And Wyndham Clark offers the upside.
All right. I'm going to give one contradiction one rebuttal to Patrick's Wyndham Clark. If you look at the tournaments he's popped in this year, they were all limited signature events, except for the Players Championship. If you look at Pebble Beach, Arnold Palmer, I think those are two of them that come to mind. And then obviously, the Players was not a limited field event, but still it was a signature event. If it's not a signature event, I'm staying away from Wyndham. That's my take.
That's crazy. Okay. Well, technically Players Championship, not a signature event.
It isn't?
And then I guess, I guess technically when you win the US Open, that's a major championship and not a run-of-the-mill PGA Tour event. So I'm picking up what you're throwing down.
Okay. Just a little bit. I mean, if you hit Wyndham at plus 5,700, listen, you own the longest shot on the board that we hit this year, Jake Knapp at the Vedanta Mexico Open. I don't know if that will be topped, though Sia was real close with his FRL with Akshay Bhatia in San Antonio. So you guys are way ahead of me. with as far as those go. Sia, you're going back to back though. You're saying, okay, we're going Davis back to back here.
I don't see why not. I mean, does anybody know the ceiling for Davis Thompson? Because obviously none of us know. We just know the last 3 tournaments he's been absolutely on fire, and we know he has a pedigree from a talent standpoint that justifies what we saw the last 3 weeks. So listen, I don't know if he's going to be good on this course, and I don't know if link style is his style. I know his ball striking is great. I know his approach and putter can be completely dialed in. I know he can sometimes, like round 4, be erratic off the tee, which shouldn't hurt him here. And I know he's 60-1. I mean, all of those things make me think, all right, we might be undervaluing the guy that just beat everybody last week. I understand there's more talent in this field, but the way Davis Thompson is playing, the way he played round 4, which should have been the round where he buckled. That should have been the round where we saw like pressure get to him. The way he played that particular round, he was so calm, his demeanor was so good, and he was hitting every single shot he needed to hit and then some. So I don't think the stakes are too high here. I think 60-1 is way too high a number. I think he should, honestly, at this point, I think it should be 42-1, 45-1. I'll take the 60.
All right, I'm going with, as a man of the people, I am making my own parlay here on DK with ties included. Tommy Fleetwood, Minwoo Lee at plus 852. That's what I'm going to do for everyone. Sometimes you take these pre-made parlays, and when you don't like something, I said, I'm going to make up the rules. And I did the same thing for LIV, but this other one is a pre-made parlay also on DK. Top 20, McIlroy, Minwoo Lee, and Aaron Rai, which I absolutely love at plus 700. So that is my normal unit size for both of those. All right, on to LIV. They are in Spain at LIV Valderrama. We have a few Spanish golfers in the field. And wow, we have picks from all 3 of you. Patrick, Brooks Koepka, that's where you're going before a major?
I'm going with Brooks Koepka. I've already placed a wager on him for next week. And so I figured it's my duty to place a wager on him this week as well. The ball striking, tee to green's been awesome in major championships. The putter has been lackluster. He's got the old gamer back in the bag. I'm hoping that'll kind of turn the tide a little bit. And he finished 3rd at Valderrama last year as well. So not looking a lot into the Nashville start just because I know those guys had their fun on Broadway. So Brooks Koepka, 22-1, wins a ton on LIV. I think he'll give it a good chance.
Now, one guy who is looking into the Nashville start is Sia Nejad, who's picking Tyrrell Hatton, who never wins. Of course, they hadn't won since 2021, if that. I think it might have been 2020 across the world. And then, of course, he goes out and dominates in Nashville. And you think he's going to go back to back?
Yeah, listen, this is a look ahead spot for a lot of these big timers that are in this LIV event, and there's not that many in these LIV events. Tyrrell Hatton, I think, is actually a good look for next week as well. I might have recommended him on one of the network shows like a month ago at 40-1. I have no idea what his odds are now, but I bet they're a little shorter. I think Tyrrell Hatton's a good course fit. I think you got to be strategic here, but being good off the tee and being somewhat accurate certainly going to help. And he can get hot with the short game, get hot with the putter. Approach play probably needs a little bit of work, but I think Hatton is one of 6 or 7 guys that can win this tournament, legitimately win this tournament. And I'll take 11-1.
I'm chalk chasing this week, and I'm embarrassed by it. And I apologize to all of you out there taking Rory McIlroy at the Scottish Open. And I'm taking Jon Rahm to win his first LIV event in Spain, his native Spain, at plus 750. He has finished in the top 10 of all LIV events that he has completed, with the exception of Houston, where he was hurt. And then look at this top finish parlay that I put together on DK. Jon Rahm top 10, Sergio top 10, David Puig top 20. You know what they all have in common, Patrick? You know what all 3 of those guys have in common?
Sing the national anthem, EC.
I not that smart. Oh. They're all from Spain. I couldn't resist. The event is in Spain. So you know what we do? We bet the players to do well in Spain. David Puig also went to ASU, so more reason not to like him. For me, same with Jon Rahm. But listen, that Spain-Arizona State connection is what it is. But this week, we play him and we try to win some money. All right, let's get on a few questions before we get going here. Talk about Tom Kim. Patrick, why are you fading? Why are we collectively not betting Tom Kim again?
Well, it was DFS. It's different. So it was more so I think I'm just going to try to get a little bit different with some Victor, with a little bit of a Hideki, and Tom Kim's kind of low man on that totem pole.
Sia, how about Colin Morikawa? We haven't talked about him. He is, I think, the 3rd favorite on the odds board, and nobody's mentioned him.
I think he's fine. I'd rather go with other guys. The putter looks like it's coming around. The ball striking is great. And, his accuracy isn't going to benefit him a ton. I think that's probably why he's getting ignored a little bit. I don't think he should get ignored. It's just that I like other players a little bit better than I like Colin. That's really what it comes down to. Chad Moody says Matsuyama also getting overlooked. I know, Patrick, you spoke to Matsuyama. I really wanted to take him as an outright because it drifted to like 30-1. I just couldn't get there with Hideki. I think he's an interesting play. Obviously, I have the matchup against Fitzpatrick. Don't hate him as an outright. Don't hate him as a DFS play. But I'm not betting him outright.
All right, before we get going, you two, I believe, have articles up for or will this week for the Open Championship next week on SportsLine. If you need a promo code to read those, DM me on Twitter. I will get you the best rate. Even though we have we have a great special going on right now. Check out our join page just for the next couple days. Just throwing that out there. All right, Patrick, your first clicks for the Open Championship. Before we get to next week's show, you mentioned Brooks Koepka. Anyone else that you have maybe put in an early bet on just yet?
Yes, so I found a 40-1 on Brooks Koepka that I dived in on. And then I found a 65-1 on a former Open champion. That's all I will say. You got to read the articles on SportsLine.
There's your tease right there. All right, Sia, who are your first clicks for next week?
Well, I mentioned Hatton. He's all the way down to plus 3,000 from 40-1 about a month ago. Other than that, I mean, Xander at 14-1 does stick out to me a little bit because you just generally don't see Xander's number drop below 10, 11-1. So that would probably be, I'm just guessing, that would probably be my next click. Brooks, where I'm looking right now, is 25-1. Yeah, it's probably going to be Xander. Scotty's plus 450. Not interested in that.
I was actually looking at Ludwig and Colin, and then I looked at their history. Colin won on debut at the Open Championship and has done nothing since, and Ludwig hasn't been that great. So this is a big week for me in terms of what are these guys going to do here. Also, Hovland's another guy. I'd like to see what he does at this event. But for me, Rory McIlroy. And another one that we talked about just recently, Tyrrell Hatton, especially at that number that you mentioned. Now that he's won, will this be the start of winning in bunches? Boy, I'll tell you what. Great show today, and the chat was absolutely on fire. I'm sorry we didn't get to everything that you guys mentioned, but the side conversation that I saw was absolutely fantastic. So for producer Jake, who does a great job behind the scenes, Patrick McDonald and Sia Nejad, I am Eric Cohen. As I always like to say, let's hit it big. Good luck.